Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In today's lecture, we will be discussing about those mechanisms by which arrhythmia are produced. Generally, there are three mechanisms are responsible for the creation of the arrhythmia. The first one is called enhanced automaticity, and the third one trigger activity, and the last one is circus movements. So in today's lecture, we will be discussing about those mechanisms by which arrhythmia are produced. Totally or generally, we are having three mechanisms which is responsible for the creation of the arrhythmia. One of them is called enhanced automaticity, the second trigger activity, and the final one is circus movement or re-entry mechanism. To get better idea about the enhanced automaticity, first of all we should discuss about the action potential of the SA nodal cell. To get better idea about the concept of the enhanced automaticity, we should discuss first about the action potential of the SA nodal cells. The normal action potential of the SA nodal cell represent minus 60 millivolt. But this minus 60 millivolt is not the real resting membrane potential. Or this minus 60 millivolt does not indicate true resting membrane potential. Because true resting membrane potential was at the range of minus 90 millivolt. This was a true resting membrane potential. Remember, in addition of the resting membrane potential of minus 60 millivolt, this SA node has got a special channel which is called IF channel. IF channel or funny channel. This IF channel continuously load the sodium from outside the cell to the inside the cell. From outside the cell to the inside the cell. When this sodium is loaded from outside the cell into the inside the cell, this resting membrane potential of minus 60 millivolt is neutralized to some extent, and this minus 60 become minus 40, minus 50. Did you catch it? Remember, in addition of the resting membrane potential of the SA nodal cell, which represents a range of minus 60 millivolt, this SA nodal cell have got a special channel which is called IF channel, and this IF channel is continuously loading the sodium from outside the cell into the inside the cell, and this sodium which is coming from outside the cell to the inside the cell, this minus 60 millivolt is neutralized by this sodium to some extent. Right now it is neutralized at the range of minus 50. But still the sodium coming, and this minus 50 become less negative and become minus 40. Again the sodium is coming from outside the cell into the inside the cell and neutralizes this 40, and this 40 become minus 30. This 30 in SA nodal cell is very important. This 30 is called threshold potential. When they reach to the threshold potential, they immediately lead to opening of T-type calcium channel. T-type calcium channel. And this calcium is coming from outside the cell into the inside the cell. Coming from the outside the cell into the inside the cell. And this minus 30 become less negative, minus 20. And the minus 20 become less negative, minus 10. And 0 and even above the 0 up to 10 millivolt. So this is called depolarization. Depolarization is a process during which the cell is losing a negative electrical charge of minus 60 millivolt, and then they gain the electrical potential of 0, 10 or above the 10. Depolarization is a process during which the cell is losing a negative electrical charge and the cell is gaining a positive electrical charge. After depolarization, we will discuss about the repolarization. During the repolarization, rapid reactifier potassium channel is opening, and during this period, more potassium is going from inside the cell into the outside the cell, and the cell is coming back to a resting membrane potential of minus 60 millivolt. Minus 60 millivolt. So during depolarization, the SA nodal cell losing a minus 60 millivoltage, and then they gain in the positive electrical voltage. After the repolarization is started. During the repolarization, first potassium channel is opening, and more potassium is going from outside the cell into the inside the cell, and the cell is going back to a resting membrane potential of minus 60 millivolt. Once this first cell is depolarized, this first cell leads to depolarization of the second cell through the gap junction or electrical window. When this second cell is depolarized, the second cell leads to depolarization of the third cell, and third cell leads to depolarization of the fourth, and 4, 5. Likewise, all the cells are depolarized. Under the normal situation and normal condition, the firing frequency of the AC nodal cell is 75 beats per minute. Or normal automaticity of the AC node represents 75 beats per minute. I mean between 60 to 100 beats per minute. On the average, 75 beats per minute. To keep this resting membrane potential at the normal range with the firing frequency of 75 beats per minute, we need a special neurotransmitter. This neurotransmitter is called epinephrine. To keep this resting membrane potential at the range of 75 beats per minute, or between minus 60 and 100 beats per minute, we need a neurotransmitter. This neurotransmitter is called epinephrine. This epinephrine under the normal situation, normal amount of the epinephrine is releasing. And this epinephrine is releasing from the terminal end of the sympathetic nerve system. From this norepinephrine is releasing from the terminal end of the sympathetic nerve system. Under the normal situation, in normal condition, normal amount of the epinephrine is released. And this epinephrine which is released, this epinephrine first binds to the beta 1 receptor. Or this epinephrine stimulates the beta 1 receptor. But this time the amount of the epinephrine in the normal situation is less or normal. And normal amount of the epinephrine binds to this receptor. This receptor is called beta 1 receptor or adrenergic receptor. When it's bound to this beta 1 receptor, this beta 1 receptor 7 times go in and out. Finally, this adrenaline reach and this beta receptor stimulates a special type of protein which is present in the inside of the cell, that is called G protein or GS protein. And this G protein stimulates adenyl cyclase which is hanging on the wall of the cell membrane. Once this adenyl cyclase is produced, this adenyl cyclase is linked to or production of the cyclic AMP. What is the cyclic AMP? Cyclic AMP is an intracellular message. The intracellular messenger is called cyclic AMP. Here the external message was norepinephrine. And here cyclic AMP is activated, and once the cyclic AMP is produced, this cyclic AMP stimulates which type of protein? PK or protein kinase. This protein kinase finally leads to phosphorylation of the sodium and calcium channel. Under the normal situation, normal amount of the sodium and calcium are released. Normal calcium are released, and this calcium lead to this is the normal was. They keep the firing frequency of the AC nodal cell and the range of the 75 beats per minute. So we have got two variants. One is normal condition and another is abnormal condition. Under the normal condition, what is producing from the terminal end of the sympathetic nerve system? Epinephrine. What is doing the epinephrine? Epinephrine binds to the beta 1 receptor. This beta 1 receptor stimulates G protein, and G protein stimulates adenyl cyclase. Adenyl cyclase is produced cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP leads to stimulation of PK or protein kinase. Protein kinase lead to phosphorylation of the less amount of the sodium and calcium channel. Less amount of sodium and calcium channel. Under the normal situation and normal condition, the firing frequency of the AC nodal is 75 beats per minute. This was the normal mechanism of the production of the 75 beats per minute. Did you understand?
Yes.
Right now we will be discussing about the abnormal situation. What will happen to the AC nodal cell in the abnormal condition? For example, our abnormal condition is stress, another anxiety, another fear, another fever, another CHF, another thyrotoxicosis, another is anemia. In such a case, large amount of norepinephrine is released. When large amount of epinephrine is produced, they stimulate large number of the beta cells. And again, the beta cell is started. First, the norepinephrine is released. This norepinephrine stimulate more receptor, especially beta 1 and adrenergic receptor. And this beta 1 and this receptor lead to again G protein, and G protein again adenyl cyclase, and finally go to cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP stimulate PICA protein kinase. Protein kinase lead to phosphorylation of the more sodium and calcium channel. At the normal range, they stimulate 2 or 3 calcium channel, but during the stress, anxiety, fever, CHF, anemia, more norepinephrine is released. This more norepinephrine which is released, it leads to phosphorylation of the more channel. When the more channel is stimulated, more sodium and more calcium are coming from outside the cell into the inside the cell. Since the more calcium, more sodium increase the firing frequency of the acianodal cell from 75 to more than 100, even 150. This situation is called enhanced automaticity or increasing automaticity. In such a case, especially in this case, the firing frequency of the acianodal cell becomes more than 100 beats per minute, and they start like this. This was the mechanism of the enhanced automatism, or especially we were talking about this mechanism, and we remember about the which one? Sinus tachycardia. If you are talking about this mechanism, you should think about the sinus tachycardia. Right now, you will repeat again some. In today's lecture, we will be discussing about those mechanisms by which arrhythmia are produced. Generally, there are 3 mechanisms are responsible for the creation of the arrhythmia. These are explained here one by one: enhanced automaticity, trigger activity, and circus movement. Right now, in today's lecture, we just start the mechanism of enhanced automaticity. Under the normal situation and normal condition, to get better idea about the enhanced automaticity, we should know about the action potential of the acianodal cell. The resting membrane potential of the acianodal cell is at the range of minus 60 millivolts. It is not a real resting membrane potential. It is not a true resting membrane potential. Why it is have got 60? Because they have got a special channel which is called IF channel. Even the automaticity of the acianode is related to the IF channel. So under normal condition and normal situation, so this was the resting membrane potential of acianode, which represent minus 60 millivolt. And due to this function of IF channel, this IF channel is continuously loading the sodium from outside the cell into the inside the cell. When the cell is coming from outside the cell, this resting membrane potential becomes less negative, minus 60. And then again sodium is coming, and this minus 50 become less negative, 40. And again coming to the 30. When this 30 reaches, this point is called threshold potential. When the threshold potential is produced, this threshold potential leads to opening of T-type calcium channel. We have got 2 types of calcium channel. One is L-type, another is T-type. This T stands for the transient type. We have got 2 types of channel. One is L-type, another is T-type. This T-type channel is opening and more calcium are coming. In the cases of the pacemaker cell, acianode and aminode, depolarization depends to the calcium. And in the cases of non-pacemaker cells, I mean atrium, ventricle, and Purkinje cell, the depolarization is related to sodium. So much more calcium is coming, and finally this minus 30 become minus 20, minus 10, 0, and above the 0, 10. So this process is called depolarization. What is depolarization? Depolarization is a process during which the cell is losing a negative electrical charge and then gaining a positive electrical charge. After the depolarization is started. During the depolarization, which channel is open? Rapid reactive higher potassium channel, or another name for this, fast potassium channel. And more potassium is going from inside the cell to the outside the cell. And the cell comes back to a resting membrane potential of minus 60 millivolt. Once this first cell is depolarized, this first cell leads to depolarization of the second cell through the gap junction. But this first cell is going under the repolarization. This second cell leads to depolarization of the third cell. And this third cell, when it leads to depolarization of third cell, itself is going under the repolarization. Likewise, the fourth leads to depolarization of the fifth, and the fifth leads to depolarization of the eighth, and it leads to depolarization of the ninth. Likewise, all the cells are depolarized. Under the normal situation, what is the firing frequency of the SI nodal cells between 60 to 100 beats per minute. On the average, 75 beats per minute. By which mechanism we first get the idea about the normal frequency? I mean 75 beats per minute. What is the mechanism that we have a firing frequency of the 70 beats per minute? By which mechanism we have got a normal firing frequency? Under the normal situation and normal condition, there is from the terminal ends of the sympathetic nerve system, which is released neurotransmitter. What is the name of this transmitter? Norepinephrine. What does that do, the norepinephrine? So this norepinephrine immediately binds with which receptor? Beta-1 receptor or adrenergic receptor. When this beta-1 receptor is stimulated by this norepinephrine, and this norepinephrine was under the normal situation and normal condition, the amount of the epinephrine is normal. When the firing frequency was 75 beats per minute, normal amount of the norepinephrine is released from the terminal ends of the sympathetic nerve system. So this noradrenaline binds to the which receptor? Beta-1 receptor. After that, what does the beta-1 receptor enter to the G protein? This is the external part of beta-1 and this is the internal. Or they say this is the, and this receptor lead to stimulation of the which protein, which is play a major role in the cell? G protein. This G protein leads to stimulation of the adenyl cyclase, and the adenyl cyclase leads to cyclic AMP. Finally, P protein kinase, and protein kinase leads to phosphorylation of the sodium and calcium channel. Since this is a normal condition, under the normal condition, less amount of the channel are phosphorylated. So less amount of sodium and calcium occurs. Those amount of the sodium and calcium are entering the cell to keep the firing frequency of the SI nodal cell at the range of 75 beats per minute. What do you think about the abnormal? Under the abnormal situation, for example, stress, anxiety, fever, fear, another seizure, pulmonary embolism, anemia, pregnancy, thyrotoxicosis. In such a cases, large amount of epinephrine is releasing. This large amount of the epinephrine lead to stimulation of more beta receptor or binds to more beta receptor. This beta receptor lead to stimulation of the G protein and G protein adenyl cyclase and cyclic AMP and PKN protein kinase, and finally phosphorylation of more sodium and calcium channel are occurring, and more sodium is going into the inside the cell, and this time the firing frequency of the SI nodal cells becomes more than 100 beats per minute, even up to 150 beats per minute. So the firing frequency is increased, and even the number of the SI nodal which is stimulated, this is also represent the firing frequency of more than 100 beats per minute. In this situation, we will have got this type of, this was a normal, and this was abnormal. Why this was abnormal? More norepinephrine is releasing, more cell are depolarized, and the firing frequency of the SI node becomes more than 100. This more than 100 up to 140. This case is very important, and those people have got sinus tachycardia. This was about the first mechanism.